Welcome back everyone to another reaction video. Well, today we're going to take a look at another channel with some trivia. This is the channel The Alpha Quiz, and this particular video is called Can You Beat 20 World War I Quiz Questions? So I thought we'd dive in. Chance for you to test your knowledge. I cover a lot of World War I stuff, not only on this channel, but on my channel dedicated to original content from World War I called Stories of the Great War. The link is in the description, not only for this quiz channel, but also to my World War I channel. And we'll wait. We'll answer each question. See if I can get them all right first. If not, see if you can do better than me. And it's also a chance for us to talk about some of the topics that are covered in this quiz. So let's go ahead and dive into this one. "20 questions in 10 seconds? No, I'm sure he means 10 seconds for each question. So I don't know if these are multiple choice or if we just have to guess on our own. I'd prefer they weren't multiple choice myself.
In which year First World War started? 1911, 1914, or 1912?
Oh, we're starting out pretty easy. Started in the summer of 1914.
It started in 1914.
See if we get harder than that.
What was the immediate cause of World War I? Assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria, German invasion of Poland, or UK declared war on Germany?
So, this is a loaded question because what is the immediate cause is definitely not necessarily the underlying cause. And in this case, if you imagine the events leading up to World War I as the continual stacking of more and more gunpowder in a room, it's all there. It's only a matter of time before somebody sets it off. The only question is what's going to set it off. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who is the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. He's the nephew of Franz Joseph, who is the emperor, the Kaiser. We always call Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany Kaiser, but the Austrian emperor was Kaiser as well. This was just the lighting of the match, so to speak. If it hadn't been that, it could have very well just been something else.
Assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. Which of these nations remained neutral in World War I? England, Italy, or Norway?
Interesting that they talk about World War I and then they show a picture of World War II soldiers from the United States in something talking about World War I with England, Italy, and Norway. Anyway, kind of strange, but okay. So, yeah, it's Norway. England was obviously one of the main combatants from the very beginning. Italy joins the war, I think, in 1915. On the same side that England and France and Russia and then eventually the United States would be on. Italy had been in an alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary called the Triple Alliance, but that did not apply in this case.
And the correct answer is Norway. Which of these below ships was sunk by Germany? Lusitania, Arizona, or Andrea Doria?
Below ships? What does that even mean? I don't know what's going on here. All right, so I stopped for a minute because I actually thought about maybe just abandoning this and doing a different video because I was a little weirded out by the wording. But I guess maybe what they mean is these ships below on the list is what they mean. But I was reading the comments, and a lot of people were saying there was actually a pretty good selection of questions. So we'll ignore the whole AI aspect of this thing with really crappy narration and stuff, and we'll just enjoy the quiz. So Germany did sink the Lusitania. Lusitania was one of a number of ships, including one that doesn't get talked about as much, which was an American ship called the Housatonic, which was sunk much closer to when the United States entered the war. But there were about 100 Americans on the Lusitania. Lusitania was sunk right off the southern coast of Ireland, and it definitely was carrying munitions in addition to passengers.
Lusitania. Which of these weapons was first used at Battle of the Somme in World War I?
Oh, yes.
Submarine,
Definitely jet
tank,
fighters.
or jet fighter?
Yeah, so September of 1916 at the Somme on the Western Front. Fleur-Courcelette is the name of the place. I haven't actually done a video from there yet. I've done a lot of videos at the Somme for the Stories of the Great War, but I haven't done one at Fleur-Courcelette. I've been to the memorial there where you can see them memorializing the first battle using tanks. And the Allies primarily used tanks. The Germans only made like about 20 of them. They did use some captured ones from the Allies, but the Allies, literally, the Western Allies, like France and Britain especially, had thousands of tanks.
Tank. How many countries fought in World War I? 24, 32, or 29?
I'm going to go with 24. It's less than World War II.
32 countries.
Wow, I didn't know that. I mean, I guess if you start adding up all the countries in the British Commonwealth and all the countries in like the French Empire, because you have Algeria and Morocco, and you have Canada and South Africa and Australia and New Zealand and a whole lot of others. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Which organization is responsible for assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand? Free Hand, Black Hand, or White Hand?
So it's a group of there's actually a couple of different groups, but the Black Hand is the one that people usually talk about. And it's never been, I don't think, conclusively proven what involvement there was from organizations, but there certainly was some. But in the end, it was a freak thing that allowed the assassination to happen.
Black Hand.
All right, so far so good.
Which country was the first to declare war?
Except
Serbia,
for the one I missed about
Germany,
the numbers.
Or Austria-Hungary?
So if you want a good lesson in what happens when diplomacy fails, check out my reaction series to Extra History's video series on the Seminole Crisis of 1914. It basically covers the diplomatic failure that took place. And I'll put a link at the end up on the screen and down in the description. But it was a nightmare of failed negotiations, but then a system of alliances that caused all these declarations of war. But it all starts with Austria-Hungary giving a list of demands to Serbia, which Serbia did not fully comply with. So Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, which meant Russia had to declare war on Austria-Hungary, which meant Germany had to declare war on Russia, which meant that Germany was going to declare war on France. And since they were going to declare war on France, they had to attack through Belgium because that's what their plan called for. And attacking through Belgium brings the United Kingdom into the war. And there you have World War I.
Austria-Hungary. What nations formed Triple Entente?
I mean, is it really that hard to put a "the" in there? So the Triple Entente, we generally, as the war goes on, refer to them as the Allies, much like we did in World War II. But the Triple Entente, that's Great Britain. It's really the United Kingdom. We're splitting hairs, but it's the United Kingdom. At that time, I think it would be the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, not just Northern Ireland. So it's UK, France, and Russia.
Great Britain, France, and Russia. In what city was Archduke Franz Ferdinand assassinated? Vienna, Zagreb, or Sarajevo?
Well, you can see the car in Vienna. So Vienna was the capital of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He was in Sarajevo at the time with his wife Sophie, and I will have a video coming up where you get to see my visit to the museum in Vienna, and with the tour that we're going to do next end of next April, beginning of May. We're going to end in Vienna, and we're going to go to that museum where the car is, and you can see the couch that Franz Ferdinand died on, and the uniform that he was wearing with the blood stain and the bullet hole through the neck, just a tiny little bullet hole. Sarajevo.
In Sarajevo. Bosnia-Herzegovina was part of which country at the beginning of World War I? Serbia, Croatia, or Austria-Hungary?
It was part of Austria-Hungary at the time, but Serbia was a separate nation.
Austria-Hungary. Which battle marked the first major German defeat? The Marne, Tannenberg, or Mons?
So Mons is the first battle that the British fight against the Germans, and that's a German victory. I'm going to be visiting Mons in January. The first and last casualties from the British Empire lie in the same cemetery a few feet apart, from 1914 and 1918. But Tannenberg is a German victory as well. That's over the Russians in the east in 1914. But the Battle of the Marne is the point at which I think the war was won, or at least the turning point in the initial stages of the war. When the French stop, the French with some help from the British stop the Germans at the Marne and keep them from getting to Paris in the fall of 1914. That's when things grind into trench warfare. It's the Marne.
Battle of the Marne. What type of warfare was highly developed on the Western Front of World War I? Electronic
Here's a picture.
warfare, trench warfare, or naval warfare?
Yeah, I think everyone knows this one. It's trench warfare. So it starts out, it wasn't planned that way. It was very mobile at first, and the Germans are trying to get to Paris. In 1870, they had taken Paris, and that pretty much ended the war. When Napoleon was defeated, it was because the coalition took Paris and he had to abdicate. So it was always kind of seen that if we could just get to Paris and take Paris, that'll be it. And when they can't take Paris and they have to kind of divert, then there begins what we call the race to the sea. But it's kind of a misnomer. They weren't trying to get to the sea. They were trying to outflank each other, and they just ran out of room to outflank each other because they ran into the sea. And that's when everything bogs down into trench warfare.
Trench warfare. What is the name of the English nurse who became popular heroine of World War I?
We need to do a video
Edith
about her
Cavell,
as well.
Maria Gulevich, or Florence Nightingale?
So I'm not familiar with Maria Gulevich. Florence Nightingale is best known for her work during the Crimean War, which is 60 years earlier. This is Edith Cavell. She was shot as a spy by the Germans. And she probably was spying a little bit, but she was a nurse.
Edith Cavell. Who was the monarch of England during World War I? George II, George V, or Edward VII?
Okay, so George II dies in 1760? I think it's 1760 because that's when his grandson, George III, becomes the king. George V is the answer. He's king from 1910 to 1936. Edward VII was Queen Victoria's son, George V's father, and he's king from 1901 to 1910. So the answer would be George V.
George V. Which of these battles lasted for 10 months, the longest of the war? Battle of Passchendaele, Battle of the Somme, or Battle of Verdun?
These are some good questions. All right, so Passchendaele is 1917. That's going to start the end of July 1917 and go until early November. So that's certainly not 10 months. Battle of the Somme begins July 1st, 1916, and that also goes to November. So that's not the answer. Verdun begins in February of 1916. I think it's February. And it's, 303 days of combat. If you know Sabaton, you know 303 days below the sun, fields of Verdun. Surreal battlefield. Highly recommend if you have any interest in World War I battlefields. They're all great, and the Somme's probably my favorite of these battlefields. But there's something really that gets you at Verdun. I mean, it just grabs you and shows you what World War I was like, unlike anywhere else. And right next to Verdun is where you have the Meuse-Argonne battlefield, which is the main involvement of the American Army.
Battle of Verdun. What was Germany's plan to fight France and Russia? Operation Barbarossa, the Hindenburg Plan, or the Schlieffen Plan?
The Barbarossa is the German invasion of the Soviet Union in World War II. The Schlieffen Plan is the one everybody talks about, right? And this is the reason why they attacked through Belgium. The German, listen, nations always war game this stuff out. They have war plans for every eventuality. United States somewhere has a war plan for what happens if we fight Canada, okay? What happens if we fight Mexico? We've got these war plans. And so the Germans had a plan for what would happen if they went to war. And they knew that if they went to war in Europe, it was going to be a two-front war. They were going to have to take on France and Russia at the same time. Maybe Britain, but certainly France and Russia. And so they had to have a plan because they knew they couldn't long-term win a war against those two. So the plan was attack through Belgium, get around the French defenses, encircle them, quickly take Paris, drive the French out of the war in 6 weeks or less, and then rush all your divisions to the east in time to deal with the big, slow-to-mobilize Russian Empire. Didn't work out that way, but that was the plan.
The Schlieffen Plan. What was the result of the Battle of the Falkland Islands? Victory for Turkey, victory for Britain, or victory for France?
That was a victory for Britain, naval victory. People don't realize there were a lot of naval battles that took place down around South America, World War I and World War II.
Victory for Britain. Which country first used tear gas during World War I? France, USA, or Germany?
All right, so this is a trick question. Germany is the first to use poison gas. They used gas at chlorine gas at the Second Battle of Ypres in Belgium, April 22nd, 1915. And it was incredibly successful, way more successful than they expected it to be. That's why the Canadians had to come in at midnight and plug the gap. Units like the Princess Pats, who held the line. But before that, France used tear gas on the Germans.
It was France. In what year World War I ended?
In what year World War I ended?
1919 or 1920?
Again, this is kind of a trick question. I know the answer they want. But you could argue for two choices. Actually, could you argue for three? All right, so let's talk about each of these years. 1918, November 11th, 1918, the armistice is signed at like 5 in the morning, takes effect at 11 a.m. That's when fighting is supposed to stop. It certainly stops on the Western Front. Fighting continues for a couple of years in places like the Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire. You got Americans fighting in Russia in 1919. And British and French and others as well. But that was an armistice. That was not an end to the war. That was a ceasefire. Kind of like what we have in places like Korea, where they've never signed a peace treaty. 1919 is when you have the Treaty of Versailles is agreed to. I don't think it actually takes effect until 1920, though. But the answer they want is 1918.
World War ended in 1918.
All right, so kind of weird narration, but actually that was a good selection of questions. I thought it was pretty good, and it certainly gave us something to talk about, and maybe there's one or two of those that you didn't know before. I missed one, which was the number of countries that were actually engaged in World War I. I didn't know that, and I'll probably forget that even now. I think it was 32. I don't know, but I hope you enjoyed that. I put some links down in the description. You can go check out Stories of the Great War, and I hope you enjoyed that as well. If you have a particular quiz you'd like me to take a look at along these lines, let me know, and we'll take a look. Thanks for watching.